everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined as always by Dakota Lasky. Dak, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I was thinking of something like funny or clever or witty to say or any kind of update, but the only update I have is I'm watching a cool dog, my friend's dog, and she's a husky, and she's laying down next to me, and she's very cute, and that will amplify my enjoyment of this recording of the podcast today. So, not doing too bad, Andy. How you?
Not doing too bad either. Hopefully, she makes some noise at some point during this podcast, and we can say hello.
Yeah.
I was telling you before we got on that I took my fiance and I took her parents' dog for a hike up a mountain yesterday, and I'm like hella out of shape. So I'm sitting here today, and I'm sore, and I'm like burnt. It's like it's raining in Calgary, but I feel like I'm on fire because I got so much sun yesterday. But on the other hand, it was good to go and do a hike. It was the first one of this year, obviously, since a lot of that hiking was frowned upon for the first couple months of the year. So yeah, it felt good. And actually, I'm doing really good for another reason. Last week, you guys heard me plug the Zelda Dungeon Black Lives Matter stream fundraiser that we were doing. We did that on Saturday, and we shattered our donation goal. We raised about $750 American, which was awesome. I was so happy to see everybody show up for that and support and contribute. And the best part about that, Dak, was one of the goal incentives was that if we raised enough money, we would start ranking Metroid games. But we spent so long talking about Zelda games that we never got to the Metroid games. So that is still on the table if you and I ever want to tackle that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have my own ranking, so I'm ready to go whenever you are.
It was a fun little format that we employed to do the rankings, and if you donated $10, you got to move a game to any different tier if you wanted. So it was madness throughout the whole thing. Really fun. If you want to check it out, it's over on Zelda Dungeon's Twitch page in the archives there. If there's any Zelda fans listening to the Omega Metroid podcast. But it was a great success, and I thank everybody for it. Once again, Black Lives Matter. It's as simple as that. So we'll definitely not stop doing that on the podcast there or here, for that matter. So yeah, maybe we'll end up having to pick up that Metroid ranking system and raise a few more bucks if we can.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. And we got to do like a Metroid live stream. We could rank it right then and there, and why not? I'm sure there are some great arguments to be had just on the individual placing of the games alone, and other things such as the fact that Metroid Prime is way better played on a mouse and keyboard. So I would rank that separately than the other games. I posted that tier list on my personal Twitter at @therapture_, and you can check that out. But that was a while ago. But yeah, I'm down, and I'm glad that the stream went well. I was gonna be there. I forget what my excuse was, but I definitely made an excuse to you, and I apologize for missing it. Yeah, I'd love to be there next time. I'm glad that you guys did the thing and raised some money. So good job.
To be fair, I was gonna message you when we got to Metroid, and we just never got there. So we decided to call it quits after about 4 hours. But that is neither here nor there. We've got a good show for you today. Seems like a long time coming, but man, we are finally going to dive into what I call the Federation Force disaster and everything surrounding that game, and the misconceptions, and just what made that game so the
Not good.
albatross almost that it is. Yeah, I was trying to think of a polite word, but it's just I don't even know. Maybe not good isn't the right word either, but we'll get there in a sec. Before we get there, we did have a few things that we wanted to briefly touch upon. And the first of that is we finally got our confirmation of who the next Smash Bros. DLC fighter is going to be. And her name is Min Min, and she's from ARMS. And I know nothing about this character, but she looks pretty cool,
five people were excited. All 5 people that still play ARMS. Yeah, gotta say, I can't think of a... Well, I hate to say this, because all consideration, I still appreciate that Sakurai is clearly passionate about doing what he does, and I love the love and care him and his team put into all these characters, and, the joy of him actually showing it off to us. So, that all being said, Min Min is just... I could not have cared less. I think I cared less only for Byleth, but I don't care about ARMS. I don't even know who Min Min is. I didn't even know this character was in the game. I was expecting like Spring Man or Spring Girl or Lava Girl and Shark Boy, whoever is in the game. And um, the character themselves looks okay-ish. I mean, Sakurai kind of just like spammed her smash attacks for 7 minutes in the dev showcase, but she kind of looks like she gets blown up by anybody who can move fast or isn't that big or can get in, which is a lot of characters, or as items, because she extends her hurt box with those big arms, I assume. Uh, an interesting, unique kind of zoner character, I guess. Looks like some of her attacks are going to be cheesy and gimmicky, like most DLC characters have. But yeah, I want Master Chief still. So until I get John.
That was my prediction at E3 2019. I was like, okay, we're getting Master Chief in Smash. I know we're hearing a lot about Banjo, but man, I think Master Chief would be bigger and better, and it still could happen.
I still think it could happen. It would be sick. I was, and right after that too was which we'll get into, was the Day of Dev, like part of the Summer Games Fest that's been going on, and they revealed Crash Bandicoot 4. And I'm not a huge Crash Bandicoot fan, but I do like it. I played the games growing up. I'm not like a crazy fan or anything, but he's cool. I like Crash. And I always thought Crash would be cool in Smash. And I like the new design, and he looks good in the game. I was like, damn, like imagine we got him. Like he's right here. Like he can do all this cool stuff. He's cool, funny looking. Like look, Crash. And instead we got Arms person. So, but hey, I'm happy for the Arms fans, I guess.
I want to defend the decision to put Arms characters in because, like, I mean, you're right. There's not like a ton of Arms fans out there, but like one of the big things about putting a character in Smash is to kind of almost use that as an advertisement for their game series. Like think about when Marth first got in, like it kind of kickstarted Fire Emblem in the West. I mean, like frankly, probably not a lot of people knew who Ness was when he first showed up in Smash. So like you put those characters in, and it's almost just like, okay, well, like this is a big deal, and you get people to retroactively go check out that game. So it's maybe not the most exciting option on face level, but like I thought that she looked cool enough, and like maybe it will encourage some people to go and check out Arms. I played Arms when they had it for free a couple weekends ago, and like it was okay. It's definitely like kind of a gimmicky Switch game, but it was fun enough. So maybe there will be some more people retroactively excited for this after they go back and play Arms.
Here's my thing. You're right. Like, yeah, like I think Marth and Roy were put in Smash even like before one of them was even in Fire Emblem, where the game was out, and yeah, like the games were out in America and Ness, blah blah. But that was like 20 years ago, before like the internet was even like big at all, and like you couldn't just easily look up a game, and like. So it's a little different back then to like introduce a character from like another region or games you might not know of. And like, okay, like the internet existed back then, but it wasn't as pervasive. Like the knowledge wasn't as widespread. It isn't the same scenario. And another thing is that Arms has been out for like 2 years already. Like you're advertising like a dead game that like nobody plays, that people already know about, and it's not like people don't know about Arms and like, wow, this could be a really good game. Maybe if they just knew about it, they'd play it. People already know about it and decided they didn't like it, and that's why nobody plays it. I just thought Arms, like an Arms character. I thought an Arms character would be part of like the main default roster. I feel like it's kind of like actually weird that an Arms character has been put in so late. Like I'm with you, advertise a franchise, whatever it is, but like strike while the iron's hot. Like unless they intend on making an Arms too soon, which I guess they could be. But again, the 5 people excited for that, happy for them. But I don't know. I was looking for. I want the DLC characters to be like really hype and exciting, and a couple of them are. But again, another entry for me that is very passable and competitively not going to see much of, I think. So probably not going to play them at all, really.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with you, but I will say before we move on from Arms, I'm glad that we got like Arms instead of like another Pokemon or another Fire Emblem guy or another Mario character.
I guess yes, with Mario and Fire Emblem, I agree.
I have to admit, actually, if we saw Paper Mario in Smash,
but that's what I'm saying. Paper Mario would have been sick. My theory, here's what I thought was going to happen. I think I've said this to you. I might not have, but I haven't said it on the show yet. But my theory was that in Origami Paper Mario, whatever, he has like the big extendo arms, right? So I thought that they were going to put Origami Paper Mario in Arms and then have him be the Arms representative in Smash. You put Origami Paper Mario and he fills the Arms like slot and he's Paper Mario. They didn't do
You
that
had me up until Paper Mario was the arms rep, but actually that's a pretty cool
because
idea.
then we get Paper Mario and we get an arms rep who's an actual character I care about and not these randos. And we didn't even get Twintel, who was the only arms character I know of was actually cool. We didn't get the clown character though, which I'm
I
very
was
happy
hoping it would be
about.
Twintel, as you said. Like she's the only one that I actually
Twintel's the
knew. I
only
think
actual
I
character I
played as
know.
her. Yeah, I played as her when I downloaded the demo. Let's move on from ARMS and from
Wait,
Smash though,
good.
because we got a lot of ground to
Yes.
cover with Federation Force. But before we get there, really quick, Day of Devs. You said that you were hyped about Crash Bandicoot 4. Was there anything else that stuck out to you? I haven't had a chance to go and watch this yet, so
Yeah,
the
so
floor is yours.
the Summer Games Fest, if y'all don't know about it, it's kind of like the digital E3-ish kind of replacement that like Jeff Neely is doing. Jeff Jeff Neely's doing. Kind of ish. And one part of it is like the Day of Devs, which is like a showcase of like a lot of indie developers. So it did also have the Crash 4 Bandicoot announcement and gameplay trailer, which was cool. Excited for that. There was also a gameplay and reveal trailer for a Smite and Avatar: The Last Airbender crossover, where you get some skins that are like Aang and Zuko and Korra for some characters in the game, and that looked pretty sick. Even though I don't play Smite, but they continue to put some cool stuff in that game, so props to them. And I think there was something with Alf. I don't know. I was in the bathroom for that part, but anyway, there were some indie games that showed up, and I think there were like one or two Metroidvania games. There were some other kind of more experimental games, a couple platformers. There was like a skateboarding game, some cool stuff. Definitely recommend it if you like Metroid. There, I think Panzer Paladin is my recommendation for you. So I would go back and look at that, that long broadcast if you haven't seen it already, and check that game out. That game looks cool, and there's some other really cool games there. So some cool indie developers showing off their projects and some pretty awesome games in the works. So I definitely recommend it. It was a cool broadcast, even though it's not E3, but for indie developers it might be. So props to them for getting their games featured, and looking forward to some new games coming out throughout the rest of the year next.
Heck yeah, I'm excited for all of those Metroidvania games. And I'm going to throw out a cheap plug here. If you guys are following us on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod and I'm at Spiteri316, you will see what our next inspired by Metroid game is going to be. I've been tweeting about it the last week, so if you're not following us on Twitter, head over there and do so, and Dak as well, of course, at the Rapture _. That being said, Dak, are you ready to dive into maybe the second most controversial Metroid game ever? I'm not going to claim that it's the most controversial, but it's up there.
I would say it's in its rightful place as second most
Yes.
controversial. So yeah, I'm ready to get into it. I replayed a part of the game, like most of the game before this, and then I had the had the gist by then. So yeah, let's get
You
into
got
this.
all you need.
Let's get it over with.
Metroid Prime Federation Force. What a game. And a lot of people, and we've kind of touched on it on the show before, how we're of the opinion that this is a victim of timing almost as much as anything else. And I stand by that, but there is definitely a lot of flaws that the game itself has, which we're going to dive into. I played the game about a month ago in its entirety for the first time and jotted down some notes. So we're going to get into that. Just to put that out there before we get going, though, we're not going to focus, or at least I'm not going to focus on the multiplayer aspect of Federation Force. I've never played this multiplayer with another person online, so that I'm not qualified to talk about that yet. Although maybe we should. Maybe we should host a little Federation Force
Well,
play along.
I
I
was
don't
I
know.
was gonna say I when I played it back recently, I played it by myself. But when I first played it, I did get the chance to like play it a couple times with people co-op. I didn't play Blast Ball, but I did get to do co-op a little bit. So I'll try to remember as best I can. But uh,
I wonder if we should almost just save multiplayer
hmm,
for its own
I
thing.
think we should talk about it because I do think that is a big
Okay.
part of
Okay.
the game and the draw, so to speak, of why it was made.
How about this? We'll touch on it a little bit, but I think that there's room to explore in the future. And you mentioned it as well. We're not talking about Blast Ball today. That's also its own thing, and we
Blast
can go
Ball.
there at a later date. We're just going to talk about Federation Force, the game as it was, um, and give you our thoughts on it. And I will never forget Federation Force being announced at Nintendo's E3 2015 presentation, which was already E3 2015 was already kind of a cursed show for Nintendo because the big game for Nintendo was The Legend of Zelda Wii U, as it was known at the time. We didn't know it to be Breath of the Wild yet, but it was The Legend of Zelda Wii U, and everybody was expecting to see it at E3. And then Nintendo basically said, "We're delaying this game, and we're not going to show it." And then they didn't show it at E3, and in fact didn't show Breath of the Wild for another year almost. So, um, 2015's E3 really felt hollow to me, and that one had a lot of different gimmicks. You had like the Muppet puppet things with
Oh yeah.
with Iwata and Reggie and
Remember that.
Miyamoto. That was kind of cool. The big games were Super Mario Maker and Star Fox Zero, but they slipped
Hmm.
in this trailer into the presentation, and I think that it never ever recovered from how it was revealed and the way that it was revealed on this already kind of cursed show, if you want to say that. I recently actually rewatched the announcement trailer, and even the trailer itself, it's just like Nintendo has a really bad habit in showing off like 3DS or DS trailers. Well, like they'll have the outline of the top screen of the 3DS, and then like the trailer takes place inside, and it looks super campy. It looks super hokey. And if this game was ever going to succeed, they needed a wicked trailer, and they definitely did not do that. And then they definitely showed it off at this really bad E3 on top of that. And they definitely showed off a game that no Metroid fan wanted. So I feel like, they had their chance to say, like, maybe this isn't the game that you Metroid fans want, but it's going to be a cool precursor to something you do. And they bundled it up. And the problems for me really just started then because it sent off the perception that this game was going to be kind of skippable, for lack of a better word, or it wasn't as important. So that's what I remember from watching this trailer for the very first time back at E3 2015. What do you remember thinking when you saw Metroid Prime Federation Force?
Yeah, I'm getting a refresher here on E3 2015, and I'm like, oh, why don't I remember anything from this year? And that's because that E3 was like really bad for Nintendo. I think other
Yeah.
than Super Mario Maker, there was nothing really. I think like Mario Tennis was announced that event, but like they had some Skylanders amiibo. You said Star Fox Zero, which I guess at the time was kind of cool, but never really got anywhere. Triforce Heroes was kind of a dud-ish for Zelda. Happy Home Designer for Animal Crossing. It was a really dud year. So yeah, I saw Federation Force, and I actually remember that they showed off Blast Ball before the actual direct, I think, at the World Championship. So it wasn't called Blast Ball. I think they just played it, and it wasn't called like Metroid Blast Ball. It was just called Blast Ball, and but it had this kind of Metroid look to it, and I was like, oh, why does this like oddly look like Metroid but not really? And then I think a day later or two, they revealed Federation Force, and the first thing that obviously stuck out to me was like the whole Chibi thing, and like the look of the logo. I was like, this is not this is not it. Yeah, I don't know. All of those announcements that year were bad, but when I saw this and it was kind of like shown, and you're right, it had that campy kind of feel to it, and this like, oh, this is gonna be a fun adventure. Look at these cool chibi Metroid characters. And then it was like gone in an instant after. I was like, bro, is that really what we just waited? Because this was 2015 when it was announced.
Mm-hmm.
Other M
Yep.
came out in 2010. So this was 5 years after Other M. So already been stewing, marinating in the hatred for Other M for 5 years. And then this is what gets announced. Um, yeah, I almost should like rewatch the trailer for Federation Force real quick, but like
It's not good. It's basically just like a little few snippets of gameplay again set in that
yeah,
hideous top screen 3DS. It's
well,
bad, and
okay,
it's only about a minute.
it is also only a minute, but I remember when I watched this immediately that it opens up with the ice caverns like shot, and I'm like, ooh, like, are we going back to Fendrana? Like, this would be cool. Like, maybe we're revisiting things. And then these chibi guys come out, these little mech dudes come out. I'm like, the, what is this? Yeah, the whole, I don't, this is not a good trailer. I'm gonna close that. Yeah, not a great reaction when I first saw it.
And the thing is too, the chibi art style is still
So bad.
confusing to me because like chibi art, I feel like that's hard to pull off in any game, because I don't know, it just looks graphically, I just think it looks bad. Like it's like everything's smushed together. It's like it's not my favorite kind of aesthetic, but I can maybe appreciate where in some series, in some instances, it can work to an extent, but I just don't feel like Metroid is one of those series at
No,
all. Like
no.
as we've said before, Metroid is a series that takes itself seriously, and rightfully so, because it's a more serious, mature Nintendo franchise, and this almost reminded me of Other M, where it's like, and not graphically the same, but Other M kind of tried to take Metroid in a direction that it wasn't really known for. It wasn't its strength. It was like Other M, for lack of a better word, to me was like very very anime and very just like had a lot of characteristics that weren't consistent with what we know Metroid to be. Even just looking at its art style, to me, it was just like it was too anime. And I'm sorry, I can't think of a better way to put it than that. But like this one was like the opposite direction. This kind of reminded me of like when Zelda went to the cell shaded presentation and Nintendo was like, "Hey, we can market this for kids or whatever." And I was just like, is that what they're trying to do? Like make it a little bit more appealing to like a younger fan base or something like that? Like I don't really understand why you're doing this chibi kind of presentation. I mean, like nobody's saying that you have to have like 4K graphics for this game, but like Nintendo's also quite good at finding, art styles that kind of get around their technical limitations. Like even Xenoblade on the 3DS was this kind of the same. It was running around the same time, the same caliber of graphics would be used for Metroid Prime Federation Force. I think that would have fit a lot better. But I was just looking at this chibi art style, and I'm like, it's like they're trying to piss off Metroid fans because I don't know that anybody that I know that likes Metroid is asking for this. So it was
Yeah.
very curious to me.
I didn't understand it because I thought it was like, okay, they're doing it to make it like cheaper to make. Like it's easier, I guess, to make like a chibi art style game, like graphics wise, on the 3DS or on any portable system, really, and it's probably cheaper to do, probably easier to do. That was always my assumption that they did it that way because they were like, we're just gonna that we don't have faith in Metroid. The fans don't have faith in Metroid, not because they don't have faith in Metroid, but because the people making it just made a horrible game 5 years prior. But they have this idea of, oh, they don't want Metroid at all, so we're gonna ease our way into Metroid again 5 years later, 6 years later, whatever, with this like low budget game. And again, that's what I thought, and do it in this chibi art style. It never occurred to me that like, oh, maybe they did this for kids because kids don't buy Metroid, first of all. so
Exactly. That's why I was just like, that's so weird.
so I never like even that never even occurred to me because I wouldn't even think that they would do that. And second, even if they did buy Metroid, they don't buy their 3DS to play four-player co-op FPS games. They're gonna play it on their Xbox or their PlayStation 4 with cool FPS games that other kids play. Nobody owns Federation Force. Who are you gonna be playing with? Which was another issue of the game, making it so that you can't play online. I believe, right? You can't even play online for co-op. I'm pretty sure. Um, or if
I have no
I'm
idea.
pretty
To be
sure I'm pretty
honest.
sure you can only do local play. If I'm wrong on that, then I never really bothered to really look, but I doubt that there was really any huge online presence to begin with. But I'm pretty sure that you could never play online. You needed like 4 local friends, which made it even more impossible to play the game the right way. Because how are you ever going to find? How do you? First of all, when do you ever find 3 other Metroid fans in general in person? But then to have them also have Federation Force and their 3DS on them and actually play together, even if that was online, to even have that happen. At least in Hunters, if I didn't have a people to play with, I could still play online against people, play free for all, whatever it is. And there was a big online community. But for this, I don't think there was online. If there was, I don't think it really was ever a big thing. But yeah, I don't understand what their intention was. It didn't seem like it was for kids because, like, who would be buying that? I didn't really seem like they were trying to make a game that cost too much, so maybe that was it. Maybe they were trying to piss off Metroid fans. Maybe they're trying to take it in a different direction. I don't like the chibi art style either, but like it kind of works for stuff that's already anime-ish, like stuff that's like
Yeah,
an anime.
there can be times where it works.
Yeah, or like you ever play like Maple Story, that kind of game, like a anime-ish, like
And actually,
pixely. side
You know what
scroller.
too is like I do appreciate the fact that like okay, so Federation Force is obviously a spin-off title. It's not like one of your main Metroid stories. So like we want to make it look distinctive so that you know it's not like it's not in the main Metroid timeline, right? Like it's very much a side story. But still, I feel like you just could have accomplished that in a way that you could still make this look distinct and unique without making it look like I don't know, cheap. I guess is the word I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
it does look cheap. I mean, you look like the
Yeah.
everything looks generic. You have your generic ice areas, your generic desert areas, your the mechs are pretty flat and blocky. There's like nothing visually appealing whatsoever in the game. Uh, and you go back to like, yeah, Nintendo's good, and most studios who seem to work on Nintendo, or a lot of studios that work on Nintendo games or license it, whatever, can pull off, you know, art styles that work with or against or around the limitations of the platform that they're on. But this game is just didn't even seem to bother or try that at all. It was just like, yeah, we're gonna make this look not good and not
Well,
really
and you know
try.
what? It's strange too because Next Level Games developed Metroid Prime Federation Force, and aside from this game, their catalog is like full of hits. Like
Yeah.
they developed Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon on the 3DS, which is one of my favorite 3DS games.
Hmm.
They just did Luigi's Mansion 3, which is awesome. I don't know if you ever played like Super Mario Strikers
Hell
back in the
yeah,
day, but that
dude!
was
Super Mario
wicked.
Strikers
That
and
was so
Strikers
fun.
Charged, like I love those games. You kidding me?
Even Punch Out they did for
Yeah.
the Wii, which I had kind of a fun time with actually. So like these guys aren't schlups. Like they make good games, and it's like
They might have been directed that
how
way, Maybe they didn't want to do
I feel like
that.
that must have been
Yeah,
it.
but
Yeah.
Nintendo was like, we're gonna make a Metroid Chibi game, and you're the ones making it. You know?
So to kind of bring this all back, so this is all coming from the initial announcement trailer that they're showing at E3. So like right away, you can from just our talking about it, you can see all the problems that just pour out from this actual trailer. The art style, the actual presentation of the trailer, the timing of the release when there is no other Metro news. Like it's very very curious and it's very not unsettling maybe for Metroid fans. It could be, because it's so not what Metroid fans want, especially after Other M. This seemed to go further in that direction where it's like this is bad versus like okay, we know that we made a mistake with Other M. Let's kind of course correct here. So all of this, all of these feelings come from that initial trailer. But I was kind of willing to let that go, and I'm like, when the game comes out, I'll read a little bit about it. I'll see how it reviews, because I'm not really interested in it at all as a Metroid fan. But I'll see how it goes. But then the game came out and it did not review well, and it took me until we started this podcast to actually muster up the desire to go out and get it and play it. And unfortunately, the issues are not just in how it was announced or the art style of it. There are a lot of issues in the actual game itself, which we'll get into here.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is that it like, we talked about like on the Hunters episode, like does Hunters really bring like is it really Metroid Prime? Is it Metroid blah blah? Like does it really bring those elements? This game like strips away what makes Metroid, what made Metroid Prime, what made Hunters. Like it has very few redeeming qualities in terms of what it adds because it takes away the exploration and the isolation element of like Metroid Prime. The gunplay is bad, so it doesn't really have anything on Hunters. The puzzles are non-existent to really horrible to really really boring and repetitive and redundant. So it doesn't have anything on Metroid at all, really. So a lot of the time you're just looking at it like, all right, I guess this game is really made to play Metroid in co-op, and if you can't do that, that sucks. But at the end of the day, it's like, does it really deliver on that too? And it kind of delivers on nothing. This game for me has always been like, Other M is egregiously bad. Like it goes past being like, it's like negative. It's a negative experience. It has it has anti redeeming qualities. It takes away life. It siphons away your life like force when you play it. Right. This game is just like, It's like mediocre. It's like unoffensively bad. It's like a game you're like, you kind of pity it, like, oh, this could have been better, like, what could have been, or it did its best here, or it's forgettable. Other M is like a demon baby that you have to like exercise, and this game is just like a bump on the road. You really forget about it. Don't hit it too hard because it could screw up your whole chassis. But like otherwise you're not really gonna remember it. And I think that's the problem with this game is that it adds nothing, it improves nothing. It's not horribly, horrendously awful and treacherously terrible, but it does something that almost no Metroid game does, which is nothing. Most Metroid games like really like stand out in some kind of way, gameplay wise or aesthetic or whatever it is, or they go in a really different direction and are polarizing. But this game I think was polarizing because it was so bland and like did nothing. It's like it's not even a blip on the radar.
You nailed it. It managed to do something that like I thought was impossible and make just a completely forgettable Metroid game. And we've said on the show before, this game is a victim of timing. If it came out in the heyday of like the mid 2000s when we had Prime and Echoes and Corruption and Hunters, let's say that this game came out in between Echoes and Corruption. I think that people don't look as negatively at this game as they do, right? And I think that we can both agree on that.
Yeah.
But even so, even if it did come in there, like it really there is a lot of problems with this game that holds it back. Like this game could have kind of proved the naysayers wrong, and if it delivered a great experience, it could have been one of those titles where it's like you'd see the review lines be like, don't sleep on this game. It's maybe it's not what you think you want, but you're gonna want it after reading this review or playing this whatever, right? But it just doesn't do that at all. And again, I don't know if that's because they were trying to make this on the cheap, but if they were trying to make a game on the cheap too, it seems weird to me that they would pick the Metroid franchise to do that. It's very much like a game that just feels like it kind of had the Metroid name slapped on it in a lot of aspects.
Absolutely, I agree. I like it reminded me. I don't know if you ever played this game, Moon, on the DS. It was like an FPS game that was on the original
No.
DS, and it kind of reminded me like if they took the Moon IP and just made it co-op and then slapped Metroid to it. That's how it played to me. That's how it looked to me. Yeah, they could have just made this game without the Metroid name and been fine. I still think it would have been a pretty like game if it was released back then, but yeah, this game
I think
I
it
don't
wouldn't
know.
have had that spotlight and that scrutiny on
It
it if it
certainly
was at
wouldn't
least
have.
camouflaged.
It's just that like any bad or game, no matter what it was, coming out after Other M was never gonna. It was gonna automatically be received horribly by the general public. So yeah, like it turned like a game that's like a 6 into like a 2 because of its timing. It's still probably like a 5 or a 6, which is still not great. But yeah, the fact that like we just wanted a Metroid game, something even like a safe, good Metroid game would have been fine. But to go this route was not the move.
All right, so let's we've been kind of dumping on Federation Force here, but let's get into why this game doesn't deliver. I've jotted down a few notes here, Dak. I'll kind of take us through a navigation of some problems that I found, and then we can talk about the story once we're done that. But I mean, number one problem for this game is first-person shooters are notoriously hard to do on portable consoles. We saw it on the DS; it was hard to do then, and it's still hard to do on the 3DS. And when I'm playing this, first of all, you have this opening shooting sequence where like you have the gyro controls, and like I hate those. I hate using those. I know a lot of people love them, but like I can't use them at all. So I want to immediately slap that off. But when you do that, it's like you don't have very good control over where you're actually aiming because there's if you're playing on a regular 3DS and I play on the new 3DS, which has like the little nub at the other side, so it's almost like dual analog. But man, if you're playing on the regular 3DS, I don't know how you play this game without motion controls.
Yeah, and even the nub is like not in a great position. It's not very comfortable.
No, not at all. It's terrible. It's really hard to use that nub to aim, and like that's how you play the entirety of the game. Even hunters will let you use the four buttons on the side to move your
Or the
to move your
touchpad.
shooter around, or the touchpad. And you know what? I didn't like the touchpad either, so I was just like, okay, I'll play with the buttons. Even that is far more responsive than using the little nub, especially because like, dude, I have big hands. Like that nub is like It's smaller than my
Yeah,
fingernail. So it's
no,
like,
I'm with you.
okay, well, I guess this is how I'm playing. But I was thinking, and I'm like, how do you play this if you don't have that nub? If you have a regular 3DS, like I would imagine most people do.
I,
I don't know.
I don't know, and it makes you again wonder like, what was the intent of the game? Like, why make this game that like is either built not built for the system or like could have been built for it but not built properly? Like, why are the buttons not like mappable and customizable so you can at least try to
That's
like
my next point.
fix things that it doesn't seem like they were even trying to
Yes,
give the game a chance.
I was writing notes when I was playing this about a month ago, and my third note in all caps with like 20 exclamation points is like, why is there no custom controls and no button mapping? This is like that's a hallmark of first person shooters. And this again, like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, this is not what I would call a quote unquote Metroid Prime game where like you're exploring. This is a first person shooter where you have different objectives and different levels. This is a classic first person shooter. So like there's no good reason why you can't button map all of your different buttons, especially because as we'll get into in a second here, some of the choices, like the default choices for buttons are absolutely terrible. Like terrible. But like there's no reason that I shouldn't be able to customize this to what is most comfortable for my particular layout of the 3DS, especially because it's uncomfortable already using the nub to move around.
Yeah, I wish you'd been able to change that kind of stuff, and it hurt my hands playing it. For sure.
So there's a particular gripe that I had speaking of button mapping too, and that was about locking on to enemies, and where I was really noticing that I was like, God damn, I wish that we had button mapping here because this is terrible. So on the top of your 3DS or the new 3DS, again, my experience is playing on the new 3DS, which has a couple more buttons than the standard one.
Mm-hmm.
But on the top of it, you have an R and an L button, and then you have RZ and LZ. And RZ and LZ are at least half the size of the regular R and L button, and they're further into the DS. So you have to skip over the shoulder button and go into the smaller RZ buttons. So you use RZ to lock onto enemies instead of the R button. And I was like, that drove me crazy because I was like, this button is so small, I have to position my hand in a way that I don't hit the R button. And God, I wish I could change this because that one in particular just like drove me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there wasn't even a lock on in the game at all. Because I feel like if you're gonna go the full FPS route, like why even give me the lock on? Because it just makes every fight, oh, I don't have to move or really aim or think about what I'm doing because the game will just aim for me and then I just shoot until the thing dies, or if it's a boss until it charges me or does an attack, I strafe it and then I stand in place and mash again. So it's like that's another thing. Like again, going back, like it doesn't really do anything to upgrade what other games have done. Like it didn't. It throws away other elements of Metroid Prime to focus on the gunplay, but then the gunplay is based on Metroid Prime, which is, you know, unexplored in some ways to begin with because of how like Metroid Prime controls. But this game doesn't control exactly like Metroid Prime. It doesn't need the same kind of systems. Like Hunters doesn't have that lock on for good reason. This just even made it like easier and slower. Like it slows the game down, and then yeah, to even use it is very uncomfortable. At some points, I just was like, I'm not even gonna lock on. I'll make the I tried to make the game a little more enjoyable for myself by just not locking on ever, because at least it made it like a little more difficult, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. That just it drove me absolutely nuts. I did try and play without locking on to some enemies as well, but like especially for bosses, I feel like you like for me like I'm not an FPS guy, right? So I'm not very good at them. So I'm like, okay, I need to lock on if I'm gonna have my chance of success here. But you know, even you said that even like once you lock on, you can just mindlessly mash the button and you're good. And for the majority of the game, that's actually true. But there are some bosses where like you lock on, but then you need to kind of move your cursor once you're locked on to
Yeah,
like
that's true.
precision aim.
Yeah.
And those are another example of like it really works quite badly in my opinion. So
It's hard to
and
be
again,
accurate even when the game is trying to help you.
yeah. It is. It's really hard to hit what you're trying to hit, even when you're locked on, because like
Yeah.
you have to move your little nub while you're trying to do that, and like so you're clamping onto this small little button with your left hand. You're moving your little nub with your thumb, and you're firing on L with your index finger. I'm making the shape right now with my hand, and it's like it looks like somebody's twisting my fingers. Like it's super uncomfortable to play.
Yeah.
And there's one boss in particular. I can't remember the name, but like it's this like spire basically in it, and it's like a bunch of big boxes, and they open
Oh,
up, and there's guns that shoot at you.
the data mainframe boss towards the end, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you lock onto that thing, and it's like forget about it. You're not going to hit anything if you're locking
Yeah.
on. So like
Yeah.
you end up just not using it, and it's like even when the game is trying to help you, it's like this is ridiculous because you can't actually hit anything.
Yeah, I saw that boss. I was like, wow, I remember this boss. Like, I fought it 3 times in Hunters. It was the exact same boss. um, yeah, that was another thing. Speaking of bosses, the bosses are not great. I was kind of hoping that they would stand out to me a little more. I think the one that kind of stood out to me the most was, I forget what its name is, but the one that's kind of like Ceres from Fusion. It's like underwater. It's kind of like the water temple boss in
Oh
Majora's
yeah,
Mask
yeah,
almost. It's like
yeah.
almost the exact same boss fight, but the boss is moving so slow. It's crawling around me, and it's like this game is so slow. Every boss fight is so like the animations are slow. Even when you fight, spoilers, Samus at the end, um, the first 3 quarters of the boss fight, she is just moving at 2 centimeters an hour around the spider tracks. And I'm like, dude, what is happening? Till finally she starts boost balling all over the place and you kill her. I'm like, why is this game so slow? The movement is so slow. There's no movement abilities. I don't even think there's a grapple. I think they're just like places you grapple onto. Like there's everything is so slow and like plodding, and to get through everything, it really like and then you gotta lock onto stuff, and then you just mash on some things and wait till it dies. You gotta sit here and protect it, because every mission is like a variation of 1 or 2 different things. Yeah, so slow. The bosses were kind of disappointing in that way too, and I forget what we were talking about initially, but yeah, the gunplay, yeah, just like it's hard for you to be accurate. Your hands hurt, and you're walking through these 3 generic locations over and over again very slowly.
Yeah, and actually, before we get into the locations of the game, which I want to explore, I agree with you about the bosses. They were like they were okay. You know,
You're all
like
right.
I don't think any of them was like absolutely awful, but certainly none of them were fantastic. And I want to talk about Samus in particular a little bit later in the show here. But one of the things that you mentioned that I wrote down as well is like even with the terrible button mapping or lack of button mapping and the awkward controls and the awkward grip that you have to use to play this game is like so easy.
Yeah, it's so. I mean,
it's so
you don't
easy.
need co-op to beat it. You can just
No.
run through it by
Well,
yourself without
even
trying.
then, you have the option of if you don't have other people playing co-op with you, you can have these little drones that fly over you and just blast the heck out of anything that's in your path. So like, and you can have up to 3 of them to kind of replace the co-op players that you don't have. So like, and I'm not a guy that's like, I don't need to have like necessarily a really hard game, but like I do like a little bit of a challenge, and you get that satisfaction when you beat a hard enemy or a hard boss, and it's like, okay, well, like I rock a little bit for doing that. This game is just like incredibly easy, and like I don't often complain about games being easy, and maybe if this game had a better story I wouldn't complain about this one
Right.
either.
Yeah.
But like when I'm playing it, I'm just like, god, I'm just like I'm blitzing through everything, and you know, the game being so easy is also exasperated by the fact that the world is, you know, again, quite
Yeah.
bland.
Can we get into the story and like the setting? Because I think that really just leads into this. I don't. I would
Well,
not.
let's get into the setting here. Let's get into the
Okay,
setting
the
first
setting,
before we
fine.
dive into the
But
story.
yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Fine. I was gonna say, yeah, the game would. I would have no problem with the game being easy if the places I was entering were cool, and I could explore some cool places or unlock or uncover some cool things, or there was a cool story happening. That I have no problem with. If the game's easy, that's fine. But like, yeah, setting wise, there's about maybe an ice area reused 3 or 4 times. Like in the first 10 missions, I think you go back to this
Well, like all
place.
of them. There's only
I
three
think
areas, and you do like five
I want to say,
missions.
if I remember off the top of my head, there's the ice area, there's the desert area, there's the laboratory
Thundery
well,
area.
there's two different kinds of labs. There's like the one lab that's kind of has like greasy looking and like pipey. There's also the one area that like is rain, like the red light, like the red electric lights, and like it's
Right.
raining. That's the only place that's looking out to me. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then you go inside immediately after. I was like, oh, great, awesome. Um, yeah, there's that one platformy lab, and like that's it. And then you just recycle those areas ad nauseum throughout the game, and which was uh, it just Metroid. It's not that like every video game has an ice area and a desert area and a lava area, and that's fine. But it's like the takes on those tropes that make it special, right? So like Fendrana, sure, it's like you know, a snowy area that you've seen before, and we've covered in our Mapping Metroid episode, which you should totally go back and check out. But it's cool because it has like the Chozo ruins elements and like those deep caverns and all the things and the creatures you can find, so it stands out in that kind of way. The ice area here is like just bland, nothing, like
This was somebody
flats.
making an ice area in Minecraft or something. Be like,
Yeah,
checking out my ice world.
it's like the most generic stuff you could like think of. There's no soul or character or anything, and of course you have nothing to scan. There's nothing to look at or find. So you're just going through these bland, nameless, faceless corridors into these bland, nameless, faceless open areas into bland, nameless, faceless corridors again. And I'm like, dude, and dude, I remember when I first played it, and then it happened to me again this time because I forgot. You go into those first 3 areas, and it's kind of like feels a little diversified for the first 5 or 6 missions, but then like I think it's mission 6 or 7, you go right back to the ice area, and I'm like, dude, I was just here, and then you go right back to the desert area, and then you go right back. Like it was, that's when I knew, and I was like, I still have 20 more missions, and I've already been to the same 3 locations 2 or 3 times. This is not going to be good.
And you know what about that too is I don't mind what they were trying to do, where like you have your three areas, right, and like you explore deeper and you find different nooks and crannies of them. That's kind of like the hallmark of Metroid, is finding different areas within the same area. But like, man, let's use Fendrana again as an example here. You get into Fendrana, you can get into the snowy area, then that kind of changes into the research lab, which kind of changes into the edge,
Yep.
which kind of changes into the depths and underwater. And it's just like, it's like you have the same snowy platforms, you have the same kind of lava-y, bouldery setting, and it doesn't change or evolve to that extent that as Metroid fans you expect it to. So it very much just like stays the same. I actually agree with you. When I was playing it the first like couple missions, I was like, all right, this is the like I'm into this so far. And not to suggest that all these missions are bad, because like they're not. They're okay, but it's just like they're very bland and very vanilla, and they
Right.
don't change. So it's like this is forgettable.
Mhm.
You know, is probably the word that we're going to be coming back to over and over again.
Right.
You know what? Actually, I had a thought too. Speaking of these bouldery levels, there was one level, and I know I was just complaining about the game being super easy, but I thought that there was 2 points where it was actually like hard, but like not in a good way, in a frustrating way, where like it's just like this is hard because the game isn't designed well. And do you remember the level where you're like pushing that
Oh my
big
god.
thing
Wait,
into the boulder area, and there's thunder going on everywhere?
are you talking about like the slow minecart level?
Yeah, the minecart.
Dude,
Oh my god, that was
that
awful.
level is so that level is so boring. The
It's
cart
so
is
bad.
moving
You go so slow.
and then like 1 or 2 pirates will jump on at a time, and you just mash at them, and then you wait for the thing to move another 3 feet down the track. That was
So I
that
thought
was
that
bad.
was hard because you were going like so slow. Like you're going so slowly that it makes it impossible to feel like you're getting to the next bunker in time, when
Yeah.
you also have to like fight off all these things. So I hated that. And there's also a level where like I think it's in like the research thundery area, where like you set off the security drone and it splits into three, and like you have to chase these things around. And I was just like screaming at my DS because these things were so fast, and like you could shoot them and then you had to carry them back, and there's like a million invisible enemies coming at you, and I was just like, I was so ready to just close my 3DS and never play Federation Force again at this point.
Yeah,
But
my
yeah,
my my
those
my least two favorites were certainly, first off, the levels where you get out of your mech and you're walking around as your guy in third person. I hated those areas. Like the stealth kind of, you have to.
I actually didn't mind those.
The,
I thought that those were okay.
Dude, I thought those were so bad. When they were the dialogue was like, "Oh, you gotta get out of your mech," I was like, "No, no, 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 don't do it. Don't make me get out of this mech. You're just joking." And then the guy gets out, and I see it in third person. I'm like, this looks so bad, and it's not fun. Like, the stealth section in zero mission worked for me because number one, it only happened once, and it's short. Number two, you had a stun gun, so there was a little bit of interactivity. It looked cool. It's 2D, whatever. In this scenario, you have no way to interact with anything. You're forced to just run into these little like alcoves on the side of these corridors that exist only in this area, nowhere else. It looks bad. You look like Tommy Pickles in like a spacesuit running around and like avoiding these big things, and it was so bad. Those areas were not good. And then my only other thing, well, not only other thing, but another part of the game that really stuck out to me that I hated were, those puzzles where you had to shoot the big balls into like the little cups or whatever, or into like the cannons. Like there's that one level where you're going through the canyon and there's like ships chasing you and you got to put the balls into the cannons. Dude, whoever decided the puzzle was going to be you look down and you shoot at a big volleyball until you get into a hole, needs to be fired and removed from the gaming industry and blacklisted, because that is not a puzzle. Okay, you just shooting balls into cups with your gun and looking down at the ground and spamming this button until it cooperates with you is not a puzzle. It's not fun. It sucked. I hated that, and it happens like 3 or 4 times in the game.
There's
truly
like
awful.
one time when you're on the ship at the end of it in particular is pretty egregious. Going back to stealth, Tommy Pickles, that's awesome. But like I kind of agree with you. It sucks, but like I think I liked it just because it broke up the monotony of like your missions.
I guess so.
Like I didn't mind it. The ones where you shoot the ball could have been okay, except that your controls are awful. So like it sucks to shoot it. But if you had better controls, it might not be so bad. But you don't. But let's get into kind of the story here. And I have an observation. Yeah, the quote unquote story. So I have an observation, and tell me if you notice this. So I think that the problems with the story start right away, and I'm not going to suggest that they're other M bad, but they're not great.
Well, yeah, let's first. I want to preface this with the writing is not other M bad, and the dialogue is not other M bad.
Right.
It's just
it's inoffensive.
It's just generic dialogue for the most part. But yeah, the story is not that offensively bad. It's just okay.
So tell me if you notice this. There is actually like a kind of a cool little bit of backstory and prologue. But
the prologue is awful.
It's in the opening like title credits of the game. So like when you press, they're gone as soon as you press start and you press A to select a new file, and then they never show up in the actual game itself. So like it's I mean, it's not Shakespeare, but like at least it kind of sets you up as to what's going on and gives you a background. I'm like, I was watching, I was like, okay, but like I totally feel like a lot of players just totally probably skipped past this because when I get a new game, I press A and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I gotta go I gotta go through this prologue because it is not good, and I'm kind of glad that it was skippable, because if you actually get into the details of what the prologue is and like the setup for the game, it's not good. So like the whole setup of the game is the Federation and the Pirates both took heavy losses after Prime 3, which we all know, right? Phazon is gone, blah blah blah, but the Federation is like, nah, we really got to just eliminate the pirates like right now. For some reason, they've never needed to do this. Like, all of a sudden, they've kind of not come to this realization, but like the fact that it's stated that like the Federation is like, okay, now we're gonna take out the pirates, even though they've been fighting them for years now, is whatever. So they decide they're gonna do this Operation Golem, which is a military campaign to take out the space pirates using soldiers like Federation Marines armed with battle armor, the mechs in the game, to attack the pirates directly or something, because apparently Samus is not enough. and they need these mechs to do this. So, and then they send them to the Bermuda system. Wow, very very original. Um, so the whole setup for the game is, even though Samus is the one responsible for practically saving everybody in the last huge story arc of the series, instead of trying to replicate that or work with Samus more or whatever, we're gonna do this like cheap, not well, we're gonna do this like mech like team of Marines and go after the pirates directly, even though that's apparently wasn't the Federation objective to begin with, and send them to a planet that the soldier the space pirates are on. The setup I think was probably skippable. I think that's probably a good thing. And the whole story is based around them like essentially just trying to screw with the space pirates and like mess up their stuff all the time, and hope that Samus is like helping them or aids them at the right time. Some parts of the missions are literally like protect a drill or obtain this MacGuffin and get it back or whatever. Yeah, I think the setup was probably skippable. It's bewildering to see that like after Prime 3, the Federation still needs to like get it through their head that like maybe we should take out the pirates directly, and then this is their means to do so. Um, Very odd to me.
You know what? I was with the intro because to me I'm like, Metroid is kind of based or grounded in reality, or a little bit more so than your average Nintendo series, right? So I'm like, okay, well, like it does make sense that the Federation has like these teams that they would also send in to do some other like work or whatever, and like Samus is this incredible warrior, but like we don't want to, or at least I don't want to see her turn into like a cheesy like almost superhero, even though I mean she's that already, but like I was like, okay, I'm down for like these side missions or whatever. But speaking of Samus, I actually think that is the biggest drawback to this game's plot in general, because you constantly hear the general or whatever, I don't even remember what this general's name is, but the guy who talks to you in between each mission, and he is constantly telling you like the great warrior Samus Aran, or the great Samus, and Samus is doing this, and Samus is investigating this, and Samus is sneaking into this, and Samus is gonna come and save you. And it's like you beat over the head that Samus is the important one doing all the important work, and it makes your own mission in this game lesser than. And if this is a theme throughout the entire game, like I get that you're a Federation Marine doing like support work, that's fine, but like it just makes your own mission seem so much less important than whatever Samus is doing. And the game just like beats you over the head with that again and again and again. And it's like, okay, I get that, I get that Samus is doing the important stuff, but like this mission should be treated as important as well. And like it kind of is, but like every time they bring in or they mention Samus, to me it was almost undermining what our own Federation Force squad was doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you kind of picked up on that, but like
yeah,
it was towards the end of the game where like every time that he brought up Samus, I was just like, stop.
No, I will concede on the setup part. Yeah, like it's fine. Maybe I'm being a little too hyperbolic, but yeah, the inclusion. I thought at first I was like, okay, the inclusion of Samus, like seeing the games not from her perspective, but her still being kind of like a part of the story, I think is fine. Like as an idea, but in execution, yeah, like it always made it seem like she was doing something more important, or if you were ever in trouble, Samus is gonna help you. Like there's one boss where that literally happens. Like you beat the boss, but then the boss like comes back and like attacks. I think it was the big beetle looking thing, like rock.
The one who follows you. Yeah.
And then Samus shows up in her ship and destroys the thing, which makes me think, first of all, why are we even sending this team in to have this like life or death battle with this big, huge enemy that Samus can just do a drive-by on and kill in one shot? Why are they being like? It seemed like the stakes were off, because at times you'd be in these really intense situations and you think, wow, you almost think Samus should be here, and then other times you'd think, well, damn, it doesn't really matter if I fail us or not, because Samus will come in and save us anyway, and then it does actually happen. It's like a Deus Ex Machina that could happen at any time. And the stakes aren't high, because if anything really ever got out of hand, Samus would show up and save it, plot-wise or whatever. And we know that it's not like Samus dies in this story or anything, because other games happen afterward. And the characters you play with are generic no names, so it doesn't matter if they die or not. Who cares? Yeah, like the adding Samus, I 100% agree. Definitely like deflates the stakes, the tension. I think a lot of the time, and I don't know if I would say I was beaten over the head by it, but I do know that when they first show you Samus and you see Chibi Samus, I'm like,
Oh yeah, that's pretty bad.
no. Though I will say a couple of the cutscenes, Chibi Samus actually kind of looked kind of cool, but at other times I was like, I don't really need this. And that's another thing about the story too, which really bothers me. In Metroid Prime 2, you have that whole beginning portion of the game where you uncover what happens with those like, Federation Marines that get attacked by the Ing. Why couldn't you just make a game about that? You have these Federation troopers, you give them names, you give them backstories, you give them goals, motivations, flaws, character traits, right? And then you have them interact with each other, and then they go into the events of the game as are described in Prime 2, and you get to experience that until the end of the game where they're all dead, and it's a really tragic story, and maybe even ends with the segment of Samus showing up and seeing the remains. How sick that would have been. Imagine storytelling in that way. Instead, we get these no-name Federation troopers that you can't even really care about them because they look like chibi anime characters. But beyond that, like all the characters introduced besides Samus are no-name characters or they're characters we're gonna forget about. You have I think the general's name was Adam Miles, literally 2 first names. Like you could, or Alex Miles or whatever it was. Samus is the only character you can think of unless you count like Silex at the end. The game is so unoriginal that there's even a Master Brain boss. Like, it couldn't even come up with its own original boss. It had to have Master Brain. Then you fight, and then you have a little bit of a Samus character butcher here, where somehow Samus gets kidnapped by the space pirates.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah, we can get into that, because I know that this doesn't make any sense to me.
Let's just talk about it now, because this makes zero sense.
First off, how Samus just gets kidnapped. I'll accept Samus getting corrupted by Phazon and having, being weakened by that. That's fine. That's, a pathogen or whatever, right? That's a whole thing. You can't really like shoot that. How the space pirates just capture Samus at all, I don't even think that's explained, but they do that somehow.
This is so absurd, because
why wouldn't they just kill her?
Right. First of all, how do they capture
her? And
second of all, there's no way
they wouldn't just
that
kill her.
If the space pirates have Samus in captivity for even 5 minutes, she's alive. There's no way.
Yeah, they would kill her immediately.
That makes no story sense. And not to sound morbid, but she would be dead.
So Samus is weak enough. Well, first of all, she was strong enough to be a Deus Ex Machina for the entire game. But then, when it's convenient for the plot, she becomes weak enough to be captured by the same space pirates that 4 randoms are plowing through, by the way. Literally decimating these 4 rando dudes, or whoever, are just mercilessly beating down the pirates with no problem, right? Because the game is easy. Somehow, those same pirates are able to capture Samus alive and trap her in some weird, room that makes her a giant, which was confusing because then I was like, wait, is everybody chibi also, so that makes her regular size, or are the chibis still considered normal? Whatever. But either way, they make her a giant, which is canon, I guess. I guess this game is canon.
I don't know if it is. I'm willing to accept that maybe something happened where Samus was knocked unconscious and the space pirates collected her. I don't know.
I can accept that. I can't accept that. That's character. Samus is defined as being able to hold on her own for the most part. Like, when has she ever been able to?
I don't disagree, but think of the start of corruption. She gets zapped by Dark Samus and she's out. And obviously, there's no enemy on the same level as Dark Samus, and It's entirely far-fetched, and I don't think it would actually happen. But I'm willing to suspend my disbelief just for a little bit.
Maybe if they showed us,
maybe got captured, and maybe if they showed it. But come on, I can't extend my disbelief that much. Where if they had her, they wouldn't immediately eliminate her, and then they use her as a weapon. And that goes into the final fight here, because the fight itself is really bad. She's just in morph ball form, which is like really dumb. I feel like it was just like it was dumb. Like why would she stay in morph ball mode the entire time? And maybe it's because we already had like boss battles with SAX and Dark Samus a couple times, but like
I think it was easier to
why?
make because it's easier to animate a big ball
Probably, yeah.
than a giant
But
chibi Samus.
just in like the story context, though, it's like this doesn't make sense.
Well, I
right?
guess I will accept. I maybe not accept, but I will humor the idea that because the pirates are notorious for wanting to make a bioweapon out of literally anything, that instead of killing Samus, they decided it was more fruitful to make her into a weapon. So, if we're gonna accept that she somehow got captured, I'll continue to accept that okay, they used her as a bioweapon, because that I guess that at least goes in line with what they do in other games. You know, maybe not capturing Samus somehow and not killing her, fine, but using something they have as a bioweapon is like their bread and butter. So I can get that, but their means to do so is to use a giant ray on her and make her a giant is so like it's silly. It's silly. I mean, it's cartoony stuff because we're going back like Metroid is something that is like okay, even if in this chibi universe up until this point it's still taking itself seriously. You know, like the dialogue, it takes itself seriously. Like it tries to stakes wise take itself seriously. Like the scenarios are serious for the most part. And then you have Samus turned into a giant. That like this is where did they get this tech? I mean, I guess they got the technology because it's explained in the game that there was on this planet Bion, which is known for giant organisms. Okay, if that's the case, then why did nobody know about this beforehand? Why were the Chozo or the Luminoth or the Ing or the pirates not doing this beforehand? But I guess now they know about that because that's when the planet started to exist, when the story was written. So I guess it's like explained how this was possible. It's just so stupid. It's so silly. And then at the end, after you defeat Samus comes back. She giants. She shrinks, right? Whatever. De-giants. Shrinks. And she stands there, and the troopers watch as she gets crushed by falling debris.
I forgot about that.
Make no attempt to try to save her. And then right after, your CO or general, whoever goes, well, that was an unfortunate victory, but we got to move forward. I'm like, you're not even gonna even see if she's alive. You're not even gonna Samus. You're not essentially Space Jesus in this franchise. You're not even gonna look to see if she's alive at all, or even try to save her before she gets crushed by this falling debris. I deadass thought. Well, I actually I was like, okay, maybe she's still bad and like she's gonna break out of the debris and fight again as like not morph ball mode. I thought it was like the second phase of the fight. Nope, you just leave until Samus. Oh, she's super strong again, and another Deus Ex Machina. She shows up and saves you at the end.
And then she's not even mad.
And she's not even mad.
I can get that she's not mad at the trooper, but like they literally just left her to die. Like your biggest asset ever. I totally forgot about
this
that.
This is just after, by the way. First off, the Space Pirates somehow have this big ship called the Doomseye that looks number one. I mean, the pirates aren't really known for having big carrier type ships, right? Like that, like it's not really their thing. In Prime 3, I guess it sort of brings in that idea.
I can accept that they have this
I guess it doesn't look like anything else they would have though. But okay, I guess I'll accept that. But the fact that like this thing takes out so much of the Federation fleet so easily, like the setup for this game is the pirates took a hard loss. We're gonna crush them while they're down. But at the same time, the pirates are strong enough to have this huge war machine ship that obliterates 3/4 of the Federation, seems to capture Samus somehow and almost kill her, and be almost an entire death knell against the Federation. Like it's so all over the place and not consistent. But yeah,
I agree with what you're saying. I'm willing to accept the Doomeye thing because it's like this is their last kind of Hail Mary weapon that we have to eliminate.
I guess that's
like,
fair.
If they get it, like okay, But yeah, the leaving Samus at the end was
Yeah, and then
horrible.
Samus is like, "Oh, it was so nice to work alongside you guys. See ya, deuces."
Yeah.
Like,
So
okay.
I want your take, and we'll try and wrap this up because we're going long here. But I want to get a few more things out here. I want your take on this theory that I read, and I wish I could remember where I read it. If it's yours, please hit me up on Twitter and take credit for it. But like somebody was just like that Samus at the end was not Samus. That morph ball thing that you were fighting was just like a weapon of the space pirates' creation, kind of like how they were experimenting with putting pirates into morph ball form or whatever. They just built this weaponized morph ball, and that's why it was only in morph ball form, and that's why it was so giant. And I read that, and I was like, that is so much better than like them capturing Samus and not killing her. Like I wish it was actually just as simple and straightforward as like this is their weapon and the space pirates built this. I would have accepted that way easier than I accepted what
Oh,
the game actually gives
yeah. I
us.
mean, it would be way better. It would make more sense, but unfortunately, like the game explicitly says and shows you that it is Samus,
Yep.
and so it's like I would be with you, but there's no evidence to suggest that it's even possible. It would be better, yes. What would have been great is would have been great. It would have been really cool is if there was a mission where you fought alongside Samus against the pirates, and somehow the pirates were able to like clone her or get her DNA or like do a flash like robot clone or something, so whatever, and then do all that stuff with it, right? And then that way it doesn't have to be the actual Samus. Then you can make this big giant Samus morph ball. Then that's fine because it's not real. It's not the actual Samus, not an organism, or it is. It's it's a man, it's a biological weapon, whatever. It would have been way better than what they did, yes, but that's not what they did.
Even that's kind of lame, like saying it like it's just a alien creation. But I think it's better.
It's better than
Okay,
making
let's
Samus giant.
yeah. Let's move on and let's talk about the Easter egg that this game fits in. And I'm going to give the game some props because I actually think that this is kind of cool. During the Metroid mission, which is probably the best mission in the game for my money, you're transporting the Metroid egg back to your ship, and if you get it there, you get a post-credit scene where Silex, or presumed to be Silex, comes in and steals that bad boy. I like this. I like this idea that he's coming in and he's gonna steal this. Maybe we can set something up in the future with it. Really, this is like the only scene of consequence in this entire game, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's the only scene where any plot happens, I think, or
Yeah.
anything relevant to the story of Metroid as a whole happens. I think this is the obvious lead-in that this is really everyone's thought. The obvious lead-in into Prime 4, that it is Silex. Going back and actually watching the cutscene, it's because the game just looks so bad. It's actually kind of hard to tell what it is at all because like it's dark, and you don't really get much. You get like his kind of his shoulder. Really, the only thing that sticks out is like his body design is it's similar to no one else but Silex. I like the implication that yeah, okay, Silex is getting closer, like infiltrating more, and I do want to see Samus versus Silex, or Silex's incorporation in Prime 4, and because this game would take place between Prime 3 and Prime 4, that would make sense. And obviously at the end of Prime 3, Corruption, there's that extra ending where you can see Silex's ship pretty explicitly there. This is not as explicit,
Mm-hmm.
but it's pretty heavily implied that it's him. Um, yeah, it's a cool scene. It's nothing crazy, nothing shocking. I think it has less weight because um, of the ending of Prime 3. It's hinting at something that's already been hinting at. Uh, but
I
to
agree
keep
with
the
that, but
idea
I like that
alive
it
and like to
keeps
extend
it
it, yeah,
alive.
yeah,
Yeah.
is good. And I definitely think it's going to be leading into Prime 4. Though it's crazy because if you think about it, like how long Prime 4 has been teased, if you count that as like tease, like Corruption came out in 2007, right? So you could count that as like Prime 4 being hinted at or teased since then. But even after that, Federation Force came out in 2016, and that is still hinting at Prime 4, 4 years prior to
Right.
now, which we might not see Prime 4 for another 2 or 3 years, if that. So to think about how long, like, Prime 4 has been kind of hinted at, not hinted at, or like built in a way, set up a little bit in a way, is kind of crazy to think about.
You know what? I'm still not as sold as a lot of people are that Silex is going to be a big part of Prime 4. He might be a smaller part, or maybe he's going to be the protagonist in this, or antagonist rather, of this new rumored 2D Metroid game, I could see that, but I'm not as convinced that he's going to be a big factor in Prime 4 as a lot of other people seem to be.
I'm
So
pretty convinced. Yeah,
we'll see.
I mean,
We'll see.
it makes sense because they gotta have to do a story that makes sense after Prime 3 and Federation Force, but also makes sense before Samus returns. Like, why not have like a character that you can kill off or do whatever with in one game, right? And I don't think they have any intention still of really mixing Prime and the main line series. I don't know if I would. I really don't see them taking Silex and putting him in the 2D, 2D sphere, 2D world, I guess, 2D plane of things for Metroid before they even do anything with him in the 3D realm other than Hunters, I guess, and his sporadic appearances elsewhere. But I think it's a pretty clear indication that that's where they want to go with the story. At least I would hope so. I mean, why not do it? I think it would be cool to get into, and they've already kind of set up a little bit, so I don't see what else they would really want to do. So I hope that's what they're going for.
Well, I hope that we find out sooner rather than later. One thing that we forgot to touch on I guess there wasn't a place to really bring it up, but man, one thing that I never thought that I would say, and even Other M does this well, is music. And Federation Force just has not awful, but just very bland, very forgettable music, which seems so odd for me to say about a Metroid game. So it's really kind of an achievement of its own that Federation Force managed to pull this off.
Yeah, at least Other M has like a couple of tracks that are good. This game I think has the worst music for any Metroid game. Like, straight up.
I think by a mile.
There's like, I can't even remember a track. Like the first, you know what track I do remember? The menu theme is so bad. Like that repetitive, like spacey, like menu theme that plays after like every time a mission ends and starts, and like there's dialogue. Like, it plays over and over and over and over again. I hate it. And then you get to like the generic levels, and they're accompanied by generic music. I think there's actually at some points where like the music just cuts away and you just hear nothing, and it just there was one point in the game where I think I was either like I want to say you're like on a grapple hook, or you're like just going across like some kind of like transport, and the music just ends. It just stops, and you're just, all you hear is like the creaking of like the transport, and you're just, and like the wind, and you're like, this game is like trying to put me to sleep. I think it's really trying to put me to sleep. And I can't remember a single track. They're all so forgettable. Sometimes even barely there. Not even trying to have any kind of character or taste or soul or memorability or anything redeemable, which is quite honestly so baffling, because music is something that even like Other M didn't do wrong, I guess. Like Other M, I would say
it's baffling to say that there's a Metroid game with forgettable music.
And that's what I'm saying.
It seems
really
like
is
a sentence that's not
like,
right.
I can at least name a couple Other M tracks that were good, but like the game was awful. But this game, there's not a single one, and I just don't understand that, because we go back to like next level games. I remember Super Mario Strikers didn't really have a soundtrack, but the sound design was very memorable. Luigi's Mansion, very memorable sound design and audio and soundtrack. So to go from those games and then come to this game, especially for Metroid, which is known for having really good music, to do nothing with that at all, just and do like very generic music was, again, very surprising.
Very surprising and very strange, but we've been chatting about Metroid Prime Federation Force and how it just missed the mark for over an hour here, and we're probably not done with this topic. We do want to delve into Blast Ball at some point. We'll maybe try and see if online can sway our opinion one way or the other. We don't even know if you can play this online, because we forget, because that's what Metroid Prime does to you.
I don't know. I would say though, like, as we close this up, I have a couple quick moments of praise for the game. Some things I think the game did okay. I like the customization aspect. I want more customization for Samus for her suits, as we talked about in our previous games. I think customization is good. In this game, it's underwhelming, because the things you can upgrade, like, you can't really, like, there are no cool weapon upgrades. There are no cool pickups and stuff. But you can modify your mech, which I thought was cool. I want to be able to modify my suit and all that, but the modifications you can make aren't really that significant. There are no, like, most of them are like damage reduction or amplification kind of stuff.
I kind of agree. I just think that it's so underwhelming in this game.
Exactly.
Like the different skins.
Well, that's
are
the thing too, is that the
underwhelming.
skins and the color and paint reworks are underwhelming because it's all chibi. It doesn't look good. You know, if this was on a game that looked good, it would
Right.
be sick. But I don't care about customizing my mech or customizing anything about what I'm doing because it doesn't look good. But the fact that they did it, I'm like, okay, this is good. Like, I would like to see more of that. And I would say I like the game got cinematic at times. You know, like ships kind of exploding here and there. Like you got a couple different camera angles. I like that. I like that it's not like too static in terms of like entering a room when a scene starts. Like they try to set up the scene a little bit here and there with these kind of cinematic cutscenes or entries into an area, which I thought was, I appreciated. Other than that, I'm trying to think of other things that I liked
Yeah,
about the game.
I'm gonna follow your
I
lead
don't
here.
know.
I'm gonna follow your lead and give out some
Couple things.
positive like points to Federation Force. And the most positive thing that I can think of here is like I don't think that it does anything truly terribly. I actually like the controls are awkward and like you can't button map, which really hurts. But like even the controls, like once you kind of get used to it and you're just like, okay, well my fingers are gonna hurt after. That's
Yeah.
fine. Even that I think is like is fine. Like the game is just so
Bland.
it's like a consistent 5 out of 10 in almost every aspect. So like it's not bad, but it doesn't ever try to be great or a lot of times even good. So maybe that's not as complimentary as I wanted it to be, but like it's never bad. It's never
It's
awful.
not
There's
awful.
nothing about it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just boring.
If
It's
if this
mundane.
good word.
You
Yeah,
know,
good
like
word.
like
If
yeah.
this came out a decade earlier, we wouldn't there wouldn't have been that microscope on this game. It probably would be remembered a little bit more fondly than it is. But it's not terrible. If a Metroid fan asked me, should I get Federation Force? I would say yes. Like get it, play it. Don't expect a Metroid Prime experience out of it, but like as a game to waste 20 hours on, like if you're playing your 3DS on the bathroom, sure, go play
So
it, go buy it.
so you would if someone asked you, you would give this a yes recommendation.
I think if a Metroid fan asked me, should I play this game? I would say yes, but I would say that with the caveat of like, it's not it's not the best game in the world. It's very vanilla, you
See,
know.
I
But,
can't.
but would I say you shouldn't play it? I don't know. I think I would say like if you're not a Metroid fan, I would say don't play this game. But if you are, sure, why not?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be even for Metroid fans. I think this is a no for me, man. I think it's a no for me, dog. I think it's a no, except if you see it in a bargain bin or a used or someone you can borrow it. But to spend full price or even half price on this game, um, my thing is that when I recommend a Metroid game, I know it. I do that knowing in full confidence that they're gonna enjoy the game or that they're gonna respect that it's a good game, right? You really can't go wrong when you recommend most Metroid games for that. Like on average, most Metroid games are really good. So I can't in good conscience like recommend this game because I know that it's not going to be fun for the most part. I didn't have a lot of fun playing this game. Other M like made me frustrated and bewildered me and made me hate it ultimately. But this game is just like it's boring, and I can't really recommend a boring game. I can't recommend a really awful game, but I can't really recommend a boring game either. And this game doesn't really reflect any good values I have in Metroid. It doesn't really have anything at all that's redeemable that really reminds me of Metroid, except that it is a first-person shooter. But even like at least Hunters still had some Metroid-ness to it.
Hunters feels far more Metroidy
Exactly.
than Federation
Metroid
Force
Hunters
does. Yeah,
feels way more Metroid.
Metroidy.
It not only feels more Metroidy, but the parts that don't feel Metroidy, it leans into and does stuff with it, right? Like the parts of this game that don't feel Metroidy don't feel good in any other way you look at them either. You know, like you can't really be like, well, they're not Metroidy. It's not really a Metroidy game, but it's a good game on its own. I can't even really say that. I don't, you know. So yeah,
That's fair.
but it's not
I
as
think
bad
I
as
would
other
only recommend it. No, it's
You gotta
definitely
play
not.
one or the other,
Like I would only
obviously.
recommend this to a Metroid fan that kind of wants to round out their Metroid experience. Like,
Yeah, I guess.
like I'm the kind of fan that like I want to play everything that has a Metroid name on it, and I have, right? So like It took me a while to get there, but like it's not egregiously
That's
bad.
fair. I would say if you're looking for Metroid spin-offs, stick to Hunters, stick to Pinball. But
I'll tell you this: I would recommend Axiom Verge
or Axiom, yeah, just play.
That's
That's
over
a better
this game
Metroid
every day.
spin-off. Yeah, just play Axiom Verge.
That game is far more Metroid than Federation Force.
Yeah,
is.
and I would say ultimately at the end of the day, it's a game that you could probably miss, but I think that might be a good thing. Maybe, sometime, there are some great franchises out there that because they have a lot of games, they have duds. We want more Metroid games. Sometimes I guess they're going to be a bit of a whiff, a bit of a dud. We just got to hope that the next game is going to be great, and the next game I think was great. Samus Returns was, I think, a great game. And I'm still looking forward to the next one. And you know what? I wouldn't even say that next level is like fully to blame for this game. I would definitely think they got some direction.
No,
in a way,
I don't either.
And their track record for the most part is pretty good. It is what it is.
I feel like they got like
That's
the
the way
Happy
she
Meal
goes.
budget to make this game.
Yeah,
you know?
either that or they were just like, yeah, whatever. We need the money. We need the money. We'll take the contract. Yeah, we'll work on a Metroid game.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my final thoughts on it. Overall, a forgettable game. Not gonna hurt you if you play it, but not something personally I think you need to play. But yeah, not a bad thing to round out your experience with, and it's probably you could beat it in a day, or whatever. So it's not horrible. But yeah, it is what it is. Not great, not a standout game, but it's not other end.
Well, we hope that you guys thought that this episode was not forgettable. I don't know if this is going to be our longest one yet, but it's going to be in contention.
We could keep talking to hit that an hour and a half mark if you want. We could keep blabbering for another 2 minutes.
Oh boy. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll do my outro and we'll see where we get to. Thank you guys for listening. Of course, we want you to check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. I am at Spiteri316. Dak is at the Rapture _ on Twitter and on Twitch, so check him out over there. We're gonna get out of here. We hope that you guys enjoyed our episode on the Federation Force disaster. We're gonna be back and talk about Blast Ball at some point, and maybe we do a little bit of a follow-up. Let us know what you think about our episode over in the Metroid Database Discord. We are active over there, so come and join and chat with us there. We're very active in there, so if you have some thoughts, come and let us know. We want you to check us out over on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, you know the drill, wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe to the Omega Metroid Podcast. Leave us a 5-star review if you think we've earned it. We'd really appreciate that. And until next week, guys, we will see you then.